Welcome to What Are You Sporting About podcast, a podcast about business, employment, sports, and entertainment to help educate, support, and guide you to your next level. Here's your host, attorney Savania De Barros.
Hello, everybody. I'm back, Savania De Barros, the protector of athletes and also the founding and principal attorney of the S.L. De Barros Law Firm. I'm super excited to speak with someone who is in my mind, a social justice impact influencer. That might not be the adequate title to give this amazing guest. So I want to give you guys a little bit of a background for who we have with us today, Mr. Adam Lewis. I actually met this gentleman during I think it was a networking event. Yep.
Yeah.
And when I heard him speak about what he does, I was like, oh, I love that. Because what he's sporting about, this platform really has taken on its own life to see how other people are using sport to further their purpose and their goals in life. So let me just tell you a little bit about Adam. He is focused on using play and sport to drive social justice and address the great challenges facing our communities. He currently serves as an advisory board member to the Portland, Oregon Parks and Recreation Bureau. He's a community giving officer creating economic equity across Oregon and the principal consultant at an innovative fantasy sports startup. And prior to that, he served as a managing director of Street Soccer USA Portland, which is a nonprofit that he founded, and led social impact legacy strategy for INEOS. You're going to have to tell us what that means at the World Athletics Championships of OR22, and was a fellow at the New Leaders Council. As a community advocate, Lewis has talked about play and empathy at TEDx. Who hasn't heard about the TEDx talks? Delivered a keynote at the 2022 NLC Convention on Play and Politics, was the 2019 Portland Timbers Community MVP Award winner, the Multnomah Athletic Foundation Impact Award winner, and has been featured in the Washington Post, USA Today, and the Oregonian. So welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here, Mr. Lewis. And with that said, is there anything I missed that you would like people to know more about?
No, frankly, I wish someone would introduce me like that all the time. That was great.
Well, your background is absolutely impressive. I love it. I love that you truly are using sport as a mechanism to eradicate injustices by promoting social justice. So that is right up my alley, and I'm ready to dive into it today. So my first question for you is, what are you sporting about? I feel like I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah. I think for me, it all centers around using play in sport to not only drive social justice, but to also reimagine the way that we play. And I mean that everything from, you and I are putting on pads and a helmet and playing in the Super Bowl in front of 100,000 people, or we're playing rock, paper, scissors to see who has to take out the trash later. That if we reimagine the importance of these tiny little moments of self-expression to see what they really are, which are these radical moments of justice, of equality, we can learn how to do that everywhere else. And so, what am I sporting about? I believe that sport and play should be at the crux of everything we do. It should be in companies. It should be widespread for youth. And frankly, it should be in our legislatures and our judiciaries more.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I want to ask you to expound on this. How, since you've been in this space and using play as a mechanism or a tool, if you will, to promote social justice, how have you been seeing this play out? And is it more that you feel could be done?
Yeah.
Let's go from there.
I think I'll kind of start with the latter half of your question. There's certainly always more that we could do. I think that if you look at the way that our society has treated play in sport, it's always sort of as an afterthought. I think from a personal level, I can't count the amount of times that I've said to myself, oh, I don't have time, I don't have the money, I don't have the energy to do that. And it's always around something to do that is playful, that is expressive, and that's overall fun. And that's also seen in our larger systems. There's a massive divestment away from youth sports, first and foremost, but then also, as you get older, there's this complete, divestment away from being able to do that in your daily life. And so, yes, there's obviously way more that we could do. I think in the space, there's a lot of exciting movement around collective action, where folks are starting to recognize that all of these disparate organizations that are all doing great work in their communities aren't talking to each other, and they're not collaborating, and they're not creating continuums based on specific issue areas. I was having a conversation the other day and sort of doing some imagining and some futurism and thinking, what if you got every youth sports provider in a city to all focus on addressing homelessness, or all focus on addressing criminal justice reform? Getting kids active and getting people to fall in love with sport in their communities is a byproduct of that work. And so taking that one step further to say, what is the point of playing? What is the point of sport in creating a more equitable community?
That is, in my mind, I'm thinking very innovative, but also what roadblocks you've run into. Because when you're thinking about or mentioning, okay, how can we impact the criminal justice reform and other community type issues around play, some people may say, well, what are we playing? Like, how does play correlate to eradicating hundreds of years of systematic, systems and injustices? How is play going to eradicate those things? And then another thought process is, or question, what is causing us, and is it just Americans, what is costing us the ability to play in our everyday lives? Because you said that we're divesting that. So answer those two questions for me. One, are we being innovative, and is it realistic to say that we can incorporate play to eradicate systematic issues in our system? And two, I can't even remember the second question.
No, that's okay.
So yeah, let's do that first.
Yeah. So first off, I just want to say that's an extremely thoughtful question, and really gets at the crux of this work. Is I'll start by saying that sport and play isn't a catch-all to eradicate hundreds of years of injustice, just speaking about the United States specifically. But it is a part of it, and it's a necessary part of it that we haven't yet explored in earnest. And I'll sort of speak to this in really two different ways. Is, I mentioned this earlier, is the necessity for us to reimagine what sport and games can teach us as these radical models of justice and equity. And I think that if we have the opportunity to play more, we get better at it everywhere else. And so if we think about our civic leaders and judiciaries and legislatures, and we wonder why we continually have regressive policies, one answer to that might be that people in power don't actually understand how to see their constituents or their community members as their equals, as somebody that they could play with. And one potential solution to that is to increase the amount that you play together. I think to speak to this second part of that question about innovative ways to inject this into an issue area, and we've sort of talked about criminal justice reform off and on throughout our conversation, is you can kind of break that issue down. And although this is quite reductive, so bear with me, this is the abridged podcast version. Is you can inject programs into prevention. So in neighborhoods that are over-policed and over-incarcerated, within facilities to make the actual carceral system do what it is supposed to do, not create more harm, but actually be reformative. And then the last one is in anti-recidivism and making sure that folks aren't caught in this endless loop. And so when you think about that notion of collective action and how all of these different organizations could work together, there is no reason that an organization that's focused on prevention shouldn't have direct contact with the organization providing direct service and direct conversation with the organization that's handling anti-recidivism issues to create this continuum. And that, unfortunately just isn't happening. And so I think that if you take both of those parts in sum, the first one being this reimagination of what games can teach us and placing more emphasis on why we should do them in everyday life. And then the very sort of pragmatic solution of reorienting sport to address social issues, I think we're going to start to see results. And, again, I'm decidedly biased. I remember what sport did for me and the way that it changed my outlook on, frankly, on the world and how integral it is to my personal story. But I also think that is, a broken system in the US, at least, that we need to fix.
Oof, man. Okay. So you said a lot. Now I remember my other question too, because you were talking about how we essentially divest the play, right? So we divest our fun. And I don't know the particular statistics around all of this, but I do know just from traveling the world that typically Americans seem to be overworked, underpaid, more stressed out, more health issues, extreme overweight, all sorts of things. And so what has gotten us to the place where we have now divested fun, and how can we integrate that back into our own individual lives and maybe be the person, the beacon at our place of employment or in our community centers or in our sports to really implement that concept back into the spaces that we occupy so we can be better and start making change a little bit at a
time? In terms of what got us there, I think we might need a whole podcast for that. I'm not sure if I can, frankly, in the 30 minutes we have, put a succinct answer on what got us to divest from play. The thing that I will say, and this is something that stuck with me throughout my career, is, we built the system this way so we can change it. And so for me, how do we break out of this mold? How do we get there? Is to frankly invest in play. And I don't mean invest in it, strictly monetarily, although that is part of it, is earmarking funding at sort of every level of a larger system, as well as in your individual lives. But also rethinking how and why we want people to play and how and why you can incorporate that into your daily life, right? My play might look very different from yours. Mine could be painting, drawing, and riding a bicycle. And, yours could be, I don't know, it could be volleyball or frankly, board games or whatever it is, but it's injecting these moments of expression and play where we can get better at learning what justice looks like and frankly, what restoring humanity and other people, feels like. And I think to kind of put a bow on this answer, for me, it's, play can be a lobbying tool and an activism tool without ever opening your mouth. That, throughout my career, seeing judges, politicians, folks that are governing, frankly, where we all sleep every night, playing with some of our most vulnerable communities, whether that's folks experiencing homelessness or folks in correctional facilities, migrant detention centers, you can see the wheels sort of metaphorically start to turn, that, we're suddenly placing folks that have lived experience in the greatest challenges of our community in a position where they can make a really incredibly impactful difference in the way that folks govern our societies, frankly, view them. And again, it's without having a slick suit and being able to go to Washington and, knowing all the tricks of lobbying and how to get into an office. It's just by doing a thing that, frankly, we all know how to do.
That's good. Because you know how people say music unites us, sports unites us. I don't care wherever you go in this world, those will be two common things that connect humanity.
Yep.
And so when we think about different ways to bridge some of the gaps that we all experience, and like you were saying, you can literally lobby through the game of play. I started thinking about how marketers talk about how are you connecting with your ideal audience. And so this is how I see it. Play could equal like, know, and trust, because if someone's playing with you, they just hang out with you, they're not forcing you to do a particular thing or forcing you to think a particular way, you end up just liking that person, you know that person, and at some point you're probably going to trust that person just because you see them on a regular basis. But this, like the conversation around play and social justice, I didn't really know what I was going to get from you, because I'm like, well, when I heard you talk about it, I said, okay, this is pretty interesting, because in my own way, I'm trying to eradicate injustices through the practice of law. And so I never really thought about play from different perspectives, as people will describe them kind of like hobbies, right? So you say, I can go and I can paint, which is something I love to do, by the way. Folks can go and write songs or go out in the backyard and tee up some balls, like whatever makes sense for them. And so I didn't see how it could correlate with social justice or social impact issues, but it makes sense to me because it's one of the things that unites everybody. And then one thing I'm also thinking about is how we let go of the stresses of the world when we're engaged in play. So You've been in this area now for a while. Has anyone implemented the concept of playing with social impact? And if they have they spoken with you about how it's changed their environment or helped them to increase, I don't even know, but how it's helped them to improve their cultural environment, whether it's at work or community? Let me know. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I love what you said about that trust factor at the end, that you can like, know, and trust through play. Sort of where I'll start is one of the unique things that I've always found through this is, you and I could not know each other at all, but if we play a game together, let's say we're playing basketball together and we're on the same team, I have to trust you as my teammate to pass to me, to rebound, to run the play, to run screens. But even if you're my opponent in that game, I have to recognize you as an opponent, right? And regardless of what I think of you anywhere else, during that short amount of time, it provides me with a rubric that this person has the same power, the same recognition as me in this exact moment. And that's a really cool way to try to structure our communities and our relationships everywhere else, from sort of using sport directly to engage with social impact and social justice. This has really been at the crux of my entire career. One example that I'll point to is, one of the events that I'm most proud of throughout my career is called the Unity Match. And this was actually the subject of my TED Talk, is in the middle of this massive futsal tournament, which for listeners, if you're not familiar, is just soccer on basketball courts. Middle of this giant futsal tournament, all of the games shut down and we huddle around one of the courts. So sort of set the scene, there's about 500 people lining the court. Everybody's watching. And we bring in a team of professional athletes, judges, district attorneys, city council members here in Portland. And we create this ceremonial game and mix them up with folks from Portland's Homeless World Cup program. So young men and women experiencing homelessness. And the point of the game is to, number one, is to take the most visible and the most ignored people in our society and force everyone around the site to show them that you can pay attention to these two groups of people the same. Just because some folks are in every campaign ad and are mailed to your house doesn't mean that they have more or less value than somebody that you walk by on a street corner to go get your morning cup of coffee. And from there, it also, like we talked about earlier, provides this intrinsic sort of natural way for folks with lived experience to lobby the most powerful people in their society to make equitable changes. And so you can think about that on a larger systems level, but what that tournament did was also cascade into grassroots programming. And so these big like marquee events that draw all this publicity and all the cameras and everybody gets really excited about them are great. And they can really change the narrative of the way we think about things, but they don't necessarily do anything for that direct community. And so in terms of, direct impact programming, there are a lot of organizations doing incredible work around this. And I think it's extremely admirable. And many of those people have really inspired my work throughout their careers. And so, I think it is happening, but it's also important for advocates and people in this space to keep talking about it and to keep advocating for resources to be invested into not only youth, but also adult access to play.
No, that's really, really, really good. I like how, because I'm also a visual person. So as you're speaking about certain things, I'm literally in my head seeing it. But I like how this concept eradicates a hierarchy, so to speak.
Yep.
And it's almost like a melting pot. So if you have a common space where everyone joins in for play, although the outcome is a social impact mission, it removes the labels and the hierarchy where other people may not have otherwise felt that they have the ability to approach a particular person because of this office that they hold or this title that they hold. And it just removes all of that. It removes all the titles, it removes the hierarchy, it removes possibly stigma, around a certain group or class of people. So you can break down some of those walls first, get to know people, and you're more open to having a conversation that could lead to a greater impact later, just because you're just here to play. You're just here to chill, have a little conversation. And next thing you know, you've connected with this person. Like you have an authentic connection to another human being that you may not have otherwise known about had you not come to this particular place of play.
And I love that sentiment that you expressed, because it's very much so in our current system that doesn't happen a lot. We often view sports or play in games as you should only do it if you're good at it, or there are barriers if you're a beginner in X, Y, and Z. And there's so much of the cultural shift has been put on elite athletics and being the best at something, and that we forget that like being a beginner is frankly really fun and is a great way to meet people. And so I think what you described is really that reimagination, is that we approach play now not thinking about the people that we could meet, how we can create unique bonds with other people, how we can make friends, because the culture on sport hasn't told us to do that. And so for me, we've really touched on two sort of big buckets, which are really at the crux of where my career has been. And one is sort of in this grassroots programming, but also influencing large systems through play. And then also the sort of latter side of it is the reimagination piece. And so one is, very pragmatic, getting people in communities to play. And the second is like, how can we use those, that increase, that groundswell of community to change the culture around how we play, and then frankly allow that to dictate the culture and other systems around our country and around our world.
Wow. That's a whole nother subject too.
Oh
Culture
yeah.
around sports, especially here. I don't know about the culture in other countries, but here it's grooming kids at a very young age to be these elite athletes. And that also has its challenges and problems that, showcases itself later in life typically. But I like the idea that we can, as you've said before, reimagine sport, reimagine play, and allow people to just enjoy and be in those moments,
Mm-hmm.
because you just never know how it might actually work out. You know how folks say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. But sometimes there are athletes who they feel like they're working while they're
Mm-hmm.
playing, even though
Yeah.
they're getting a nice check for it, because something is out of alignment. Somewhere, sometime, something became out of alignment. And so allowing people to kind of rediscover what they like about play, even if it's not the sport that you're currently in, and how engaging in that particular play can help you to change your community and
Mm-hmm.
possibly even the world is huge.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that distinction between professional athletes, you can love a game and dedicate your whole life to it, but at some point it does become a job. I mean, I was a competitive athlete for many years, and I loved soccer, still do, absolutely love it. But there were days when I would wake up for 6 a.m. practice and, look at my pillow and want to go back to bed, and it didn't mean that I didn't love it. But there's, this really sort of, if you trace the origins of more or less every sport, and I'll use soccer sort of as an example, it's the thing I'm most familiar with, is, there is this really interesting argument to be made that folks that are playing in Sunday leagues and actually care about the game and have more passion for it than the professionals. In its origins, these were factory workers that were leaving 12, 14-hour shifts, and instead of going home to sleep or rest or eat, were going to play in a community soccer league. And now you still see this all over the world. There's that E60 documentary that came out about the Qatar World Cup, and a lot of the B-roll footage they have was of migrant workers playing soccer. And you're hearing about these absolutely abhorrent labor conditions, and again, that's a whole nother topic for another podcast. The interesting distinction there is that they still made time despite all of this that was going on to play. And so I think that there's this really interesting grassroots component to sport and play that's never going to go away, but it's on us to harness the power of that.
That's so real. So guys, I want to remind you, one, if you did not attend the NIL Combine this past July, make sure you go and get the all access pass, because one of the things we're talking about in a way is really finding your niche, finding where you best fit and where you can make the most impact. That's what Adam has done with play and sport. You can get the all access pass now at bit.ly/NIL Combine all access. Make sure that it's in all caps. Now, this is like such a great conversation, because when you engage in something that you really, really love and no one's forcing you to do it. So that's another thing. Like, is anyone forcing you to have to play, or is the liabilities you racked up, is that something that's forcing you to play? It's hard for you to enjoy it because there's all these other things that are hovering over your head. And so I really love this concept. And I'm also thinking about how, one, it releases endorphins.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to detach from the troubles of the world. So then you can be more creative in how you think or how you approach certain things. Gosh. I mean, I don't know. I just love I love the concept. Yeah. I don't think I even have anything else to add to it.
I mean, I guess what I will say, and it's interesting that you brought up NIL. This isn't a space where I'm an expert by any means. I played college sports for a D3 school, so we didn't even get athletic scholarships. Um, but was certainly an NCAA athlete when there was a lot of this, more sort of media attention pointed to treatment of NCAA athletes. Obviously started way back when with Ed O'Bannon and the video games, and but all I would say is to listeners, if you are a college athlete, don't miss out on marketable years. Take advantage of these new rules as best you can, even if it seems like small potatoes. This is a way for you to start building skills. And I don't think I was ever good enough to garner an NIL contract, but hopefully there's some listeners out there that are.
Well, I don't know about that. So it's not about you being good enough. It's about you having an idea to do something that is different. The way you've connected sport and play with social justice is amazing. So think about all of these young athletes who see issues and wish they had a platform to eradicate those issues. Well, you probably do through name, image, and likeness. And you're so right. Like if there's some form of community play, go hang out, go see who's at the park, because you just never know who you're standing by. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's this story that I shared with someone before. I was in Portugal. I swear to God, I feel like it's been forever ago, but was it this? Yeah, it was this year. It was this year. And so I'm going to the Afro Fest, and I'm on the train traveling from Lisboa to, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the name, but we were going like south. And these African guys are sitting behind me, and one of them is so impatient because he's like, well, which seat is it? Because it's so confusing. So I asked myself, well, let me see your ticket. And I look at the ticket. I say, okay, well, you're in the right seat. Your friend needs to go to the next car. And so his friend that was sitting beside him, he said, oh, are you going to the Afro Fest? And I said, yeah, I'm going to the Afro Fest. So he starts showing me this picture, and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? So then he tells me his name, and I'm like, what does that mean? So his name is P Square, the group is P Square. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Turns out I'm sitting right in front of Nigerian celebrities.
There you go.
You see what I'm saying? So one,
Yeah.
be kind to people, because here I am helping someone that I don't know just because I hear his frustration. But two, I don't even know these people. I don't know the celebrity status that they have. And so if you just go somewhere out of curiosity, are nice to folk, you never know who you might be rubbing shoulders with.
Right. And I think it's, if you, this is a very interesting sort of way to come full circle on this conversation is, and that's what play teaches you, is if we start looking at each other as someone that you could play with rather than an unknown, someone we're scared of, it reframes the way that we interact with each other and reframes the way that we build our world. Yeah, that's a great story.
Thank you. It was so funny. I told one of my UK sisters, and she's like, you don't know who they are? I'm like, listen, if they ain't crossed into the American market, I don't know these people.
Right.
But no, this has been such a great conversation. It's been eye-opening for me. I've learned a lot. Because I didn't know that this existed. And of course, I learned a little bit when you introduced yourself before, but I love hearing about the work you're doing in this space and how it can be a tool to eradicate some of the injustices that we're all facing by bringing people together who don't look the same, have the same upbringing, religious beliefs, anything. So we can learn a lot about each other when we just kind of let those walls fall by the wayside and we just play with each other. So got to ask you, what's next, Adam?
Oh, that is the question. I think for me, a lot of my focus is going to hopefully shift into larger organizations and larger systems. I think throughout my career, I've been able to build this really wonderful collection of experiences in grassroots nonprofits, mega sporting events, Fortune 500 companies, sort of all around. And I'm sort of realizing, what are the environments that make me happy, and where are the environments that I can be most impactful. And, one of the sayings that I've always held, sort of dear in my career, and I'm going to forget the first person that said this to me, and certainly going to butcher who the quote is attributed to. So huge disclaimer here is, I think that, no raindrop wants to believe that they're responsible for the flood. And so for me, that is a real sort of pillar of personal responsibility, is that, the same system that has in a lot of ways allowed for my success has also the same system that has, continually created injustice for people that don't look like me. And so from that point of view, I just want to keep doing this work in a meaningful way. If that's at a large company, if that's doing another independent project, I'm really open to just sort of seeing where that takes me, but also staying true to that value. But to be honest, I miss working with people. I miss community.
I could tell too, because you have that soft spirit. Like, I can't even explain it, but you are definitely in the right space. You're definitely in the right space. That. Yeah, it emulates from you. It truly does. And if I didn't feel a connection from you before, probably wouldn't have invited you.
Right.
Just being honest. Yes. But no, that's really good. And that quote is fire. Wow. Just goes to show you how each little small action we take could turn into this monumental thing, good or bad. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And where can listeners, viewers, where can all of the people find you if they want to get in contact with you, try to figure out how they can also be a part of the sport and play? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, but before I dive into my contact info, I do mean this very genuinely. Please reach out. I think there's so many incredible mentors that I've had in my life, and that I continue to lean on, every day. And, in this work and in this world, we have to, bring each other with us. And so you can find me at my website, adam-lewis.co. It turns out there's a lot of Adam Lewises in the world, so a lot of the domains were taken. You can find me on LinkedIn, just search Adam Lewis. And all my contact info will be on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for coming on to the podcast. It's been a pleasure, an eye-opener, and I just truly appreciate you for all that you are doing in this space, and to just make sure that you are touching the world one little tab at a time, so that we can all have better communities, so that we can collectively be great. And I just thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And listen, guys, if you have not yet subscribed to the What Are You Sporting About podcast, do me a favor. I know you probably already got your cell phone out. So go to your favorite podcasting platform, find What Are You Sporting About podcast, and subscribe so you never, ever miss an episode. I'm constantly bringing people on like Adam, who's making a major impact, who's showing you what they are sporting about. And so I want to encourage you, inspire you, and motivate you to your very next level. Until next time, guys, I will talk with you later. Ciao.
Joining us this week on What Are You Sporting About podcast. Make sure to visit our website, prosportlawyer.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite platform is, so you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes or iHeartRadio. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like the show, you might want to check out our book, What Are You Sporting About? Attorney Savania DeBarros is available for private consulting at sldebarros.com. And remember, we're here to educate, support, and guide you in your journey to success, because we're all sporting about something.